Welcome, everyone, to the Pick Six podcast, and it is a big day because this is the final episode of our All 32 series, and you listeners are in luck because we have saved the best for last. You're getting the best host, me, John Breech, and you're getting the best guest, who I will introduce momentarily. I'm in the host chair today because Will Brinson is out celebrating his birthday. It's an emotional day for him. He was going to go to Chuck E. Cheese. They filed for bankruptcy. I have no idea what he's going to do now, but he was too emotional to host. Now, the unfortunate part of Brinson being out is because he's missing our final team in the All 32 series, which is the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, of course, Brinson is blocked on Twitter by half of the Carr family, so this might actually be for the best. Now, joining me to talk Raiders football is someone who knows more about the Raiders than possibly anyone, and that is Vic Tafur of The Athletic. He's had a front row seat to every crazy thing that's happened with this team over more than the past decade, from Lane Kiffin's firing to Antonio Brown's frozen feet to this move to Las Vegas. Vic has been there for everything. Vic, thanks for joining us, and how's everything going for you in this very, very crazy offseason?
Yeah, it's going good. Just kind of hoping things turn out okay. But I'm curious, which half of the Carr family blocked Will?
I think David, Derek has two brothers, right? Derek might even blocked him also.
I thought maybe his mom and dad jumped in, but okay, yeah. So gotta be careful out there on the Twitter streets. Definitely.
Well, the Carrs have blocked quite a few people, right? You keep tabs on that?
I don't keep tabs, but they definitely are all active, and I do like to block. So, yeah, I don't keep tabs on that kind of stuff. But
yeah, so if anyone is listening and you're interacting with the Carrs on Twitter, be careful because you might get blocked. Now, it's been a busy offseason for the Raiders, so let's jump right into this. We're going to cover a lot of ground here over the next 20, 25 minutes. And let's start with this move to Las Vegas. Now, let me ask you, this might be a little bit of a weird question, but I feel like if there was no pandemic, fans in Oakland would be upset right now about the move. Their move to Vegas will probably be a topic we are talking about nearly every day during OTAs and spring workouts if they had happened. So do you think it's been good for the Raiders that something has overshadowed their move to Vegas?
No, I wouldn't agree with that. I think that most of the fans, if they were upset at the end of last season. I think a lot of them are planning to go and travel to games. Some are kind of sad and resigned to it. I mean, the team's moved a lot over the years, but I think it'd be more positive, more kind of going into the new city and the new market, and kind of a lot more hype. I think the hype's been kind of toned down. You haven't heard from Mike Mayock or John Gruden much at all. They haven't talked at all since the draft, really. So I think it's kind of been low key and kind of maybe a lot less hype than you would have had otherwise.
Yeah, and because of this low key, and like you said, we haven't heard from Gruden and Mayock really this offseason, how would you say the transition is going for the team? Because I think people on the outside don't really see anything because of everything that's happening. So what would you describe this transition as right now in this offseason?
I think, obviously it's weird. I think it will be good. I think the coaches just moved into the new offices in Henderson Monday. The players will get to go there when camp opens up next month. So the new facility is almost ready to go. They're still doing some finishing touches. And the stadium will be ready late July. So that's two really impressive buildings that are going to be state-of-the-art, which is exciting for both coaches and players and even fans. So I think that's kind of a big deal. I think the tickets have all been sold out. Who knows if fans will get to go to games. But I think it's been, it would be exciting if that's all the stuff going on.
Yeah, and we're talking about Vegas again. They just moved to Vegas. And I know one of the worries of putting a team in Vegas is that it's kind of a 24-hour party town. And there was a concern that maybe, and maybe it will eventually happen, is that players will go out and be on the town all night. Maybe that will happen with visiting teams more than the home team. Do you think that's something the Raiders are concerned about, especially with the Strip reopening now? And if you're out there, there's always the possibility of catching coronavirus.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a concern, but I mean, right now I can't even imagine a nightclub during the pandemic, how that would work or what that would be like. Or so I can't imagine the temptation will be the same for players if they wanted to stay safe. But yeah, it's definitely going to be something to have to worry about as far as these gambling and casinos, and you can lose your shirt on Tuesday night at 2 a.m. Yeah, definitely I think it's something they have to worry about. But I think again, probably the pandemic and the effects, and I think things being a little more sedate than they have been, I would imagine, will definitely be to their advantage.
All right, this team made a ton of off-season moves. I'm going to start with one they didn't make. Let's talk about the Tom Brady sweepstakes just really quick. I know you wrote about this for The Athletic. How interested do you think the Raiders were in adding Brady? And do you think they ever had a chance, or do you think Brady just kind of shut the door on that, or the Raiders shut the door on it?
I think there was some interest. I think the price tag was a little much. I think if they had gotten an inclination that Tom Brady wanted to come here, that may have made things even more, turn the knob up a little bit more. But I think this didn't really ever happen like that. I think it's kind of it was more a feeling out process. I think he was happier to go to Tampa, get the money he wanted, the situation he wanted. He wanted to change in terms of coaching styles. And Bruce Arians is definitely a lot more laid back than Bill Belichick. So I just think that was kind of the way he was headed, probably early on. So, I think the Raiders kind of put their toes in the water, then kind of got their toes out pretty quick.
All right, let's jump to Derek Carr. We talk about him a lot on this podcast. And real quick, how do you think he took just the whole conversations about Tom Brady and the possibility, that he might be replaced if Brady had maybe shown interest in the Raiders?
Yeah, I talked to him and did a story, an interview with him after that happened, and he was cool with it. I mean, his take, I think it's a good take, is that, you know what, if you don't, look into getting the best quarterback of all time, obviously you're not doing something right. I mean, that's obviously a guy you have to look at. And if you're Derek Carr, like, you know what, if I get replaced, it's going to be by the best quarterback of all time. Otherwise, I'll be back, which I think that's just the way to look at it. So I think he's fine. He knows it's a big year for him and for John Gruden. And the offense has got 10 of 11 players back. So everything's pointing to a good year for him. I think he's very optimistic and excited about this season.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there saying it is a big year. Maybe this is just my opinion as someone who grew up in Cincinnati, but it feels like Derek Carr is the new Andy Dalton, where people love to debate whether or not he's the true franchise quarterback who can help the Raiders take the next step, get a playoff win or two and maybe even get back to the Super Bowl. How much pressure do you think is on Derek Carr heading into 2020, especially with the team that Gruden and Mayock have put around him this year?
Yeah, I think it's a good comp. I think with Andy Dalton, obviously you have to have some success enough to tease people and want them to have more success. They expect more out of you at some point. So I think that's been the case with Derek. He's had some downfalls, some injuries. I think there is a lot of pressure on Derek this year. I think this is the first time they brought in someone to really challenge him in the 7 years here now. I mean, Marcus Mariota, they give him $7.5 million guaranteed money. So it won't happen right away, but at some point he'll be ready to challenge for the job. And I think Dirk has to play well to keep him, at a distance.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Mariota because that was going to be my next question. I actually thought that was one of the most interesting signings of the offseason, and maybe didn't, just because of everything that's going on, didn't get as much nationwide traction as it probably should have been. You're bringing a guy who a former number 2 overall pick who started a bunch of games in Tennessee. Do you think there's any chance that Mariota ends up pushing Carr for the starting job? Do you think if Carr struggles, the Raiders might turn to Mariota?
Yeah, obviously, you don't want to predict anyone having a rough start, but if Derek got off to a bad first 5 or 6 games, I think it would be a hot topic. I think, again, you don't give a guy $7.5 million just the whole clipboard. So I think, and there's also incentives. Like if he wins a job this year, Mariota becomes a guy next year, he gets a lot more money. So, and if he doesn't, it's a 1-year, $7.5 million deal. He can go on to somewhere else next year and try to get a chance to start. So I think it's a good deal for him. It's a good deal for the Raiders. I think it's all on Derek Carr's shoulders. He has to make sure he plays well enough to make sure that's not even a topic in week 6 or 7.
Yeah, and the Raiders have definitely been trying to put as many weapons around him as possible. And one of the weapons they added was Henry Ruggs, who I think was a pick that didn't surprise anyone. How excited is the team about him and what he might be able to do to help that offense?
Yeah, they're very excited. They love his speed. More than that, they love his toughness. I think if you watch his game film, he's more than just a speedster. He definitely hits a lot of things in special teams and makes the tackles and interceptions. Just a physical guy who likes to mix it up a little bit. So I think ideally John Gruden thinks he's their version of Tyreek Hill, a guy that can use different ways and kind of just spread the field for other guys. Like Darren Waller should have a lot less attention now with Henry Ruggs going deep on a slant pattern. So I think it's definitely an exciting move for the coaching staff and for Derek Carr.
Do you think this offense will be one that looks similar to what it did last season? Obviously, they have Josh Jacobs in the backfield. John Gruden loves to pound the ball, but now they have a lot of good receivers. They have Henry Ruggs, Tyrell Williams. They signed Nelson Aguilar, Hunter Renfrow in there. Do you think they'll start throwing the ball a little bit more, or do you think it will be pretty similar to what they did last year?
I think they have to with the guys they brought in, but I also think John has said just after the draft, it's not going to change too much. They're still going to use 3 tight end sets. They're going to pound the ball. That's what he likes to do, but now, with these other options you have, it just gives you guys more options. There's definitely more room to operate. And I think you always want, if you can score on a deep throw, it definitely saves you some time and effort. So I think they'll mix that in. I think Darren Waller will have a big year. So I think the offense will be a lot more wide open and more spread out. But still, I think there will be more always emphasis on pounding the ball and using as many tight ends as you can get on the field.
Yeah, and speaking of tight ends, one of the guys they added was Jason Witten. And let's be honest, no one was busier this offseason than the Raiders. It seemed like they were signing a new guy every other day. Besides Witten and Aguilar, a bunch of defensive guys who will probably be starting: Malik Collins, Cory Littleton, Demarius Randall, and a few guys I'm definitely not naming. Who do you think out of everyone they signed this offseason was the biggest signing for this team, and why?
I have to go with Cory Littleton, linebacker from the Rams. I think they also signed Nick Kwiatkowski from the Bears. So they have probably the best linebackers they've had in a very long time. It's been a position they've always kind of overlooked and underachieved at. It's been a problem. Their defense has been terrible the last decade. So I think both those guys can cover. Both those guys are athletic. They kind of can get to the ball in a hurry. So I think it's going to be exciting for fans to actually see some good linebacker play in a silver and black jersey.
Yeah, Vic, you're leading me right into my next question every time, so I'm loving this. Now, you just mentioned how bad their defense has been. It seems like it was their focus to kind of revamp this defense this offseason, and obviously that makes sense because you wrote about this past week that the team has literally had a bad defense for the better part of a decade. They've ranked at the bottom of the NFL on giving up the most points, whether it's yardage, it's literally everything, and Vic wrote a fantastic story that you can read on The Athletic. So let me ask you this. Do you think they did enough? Do you think this defense can be good this year? And maybe good isn't good enough. Do you think they're going to be good enough to slow down a team like the Chiefs?
That's a big ask. I think definitely they'll be better. I mean, it's hard to say. And the linebackers, obviously, that will be much better. But some of the question marks in front. I mean, you need a bounce back here from Clee Furl, and obviously Max Crosby to do what he did last year. He had 10 sacks. So to duplicate that. They need that pass pressure. They got Carl Nassib also to help out there. So the pressure is a key factor that is better this year. Secondary still got kind of question mark. I mean, I like Trayvon Mullen, and then they have the first-round pick with Damon Arnett. So if he's as good as they think he is, then obviously it also lends itself to having a much better defense this season.
What would you say, and this could be on offense or defense or special teams, what do you think the team's biggest weakness is right now?
That's a good question. I have to the offense, I think, should be elite. I mean, the offensive line is great, and the receivers should be good enough. So Josh Jacobs is a stud. So I have to go defense. I love the linebackers already, so I'm going to go with I'll go secondary. I think we don't know how good Damon Arnett's going to be, and having no off-season workouts is going to be tough for a rookie to come in. And then they also signed Prince Kamara, which is a solid guy. But, I mean, you mentioned the Chiefs and what a big threat there they are. So to stop them, you have to be able to cover guys and stay with guys long enough. So I think that secondary will be put to the test. So I think that will be the big question mark for me as far as the defense goes.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to ask Vic what the biggest positional battle this team is going to have at training camp. All right, everyone, welcome back. And Vic, you just mentioned the secondary is possibly the weakness, maybe the biggest worry going into the season, especially in a division when you're playing with the Kansas City Chiefs. What do you think is going to be the biggest positional battle at training camp? Is it going to be for one of those corner spots or somewhere else? Yeah,
we'll stay in the secondary. I'll go with safety. They have Eric Harris back from last year. They have signed Jeff Heath from the Cowboys. Now signed Demarius Randall. So I think those three guys will be fighting for a spot opposite Jonathan Abram, who's back from injury last year, and they have big plans for him. So obviously, some kind of combination of those four guys has to start at safety and make some plays. So I think that will be my spot to really focus on once we get in the training camp.
And even though the secondary has struggled, it seems like this year is different just in the sense that at least they have more talent to choose from to fill those spots where they have been struggling. You mentioned Prince Amukamara and, obviously Damon Arnett's now there. So it does feel like, and Demarius Randall they added, it does feel like there is more talent in the secondary, but we don't know if that's going to translate to success on the field. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, one name I'm not mentioning is Amik Robertson, their fourth-round pick. He's only 5'8", but a lot of scouts loved him. It's nasty at cornerback, and he wants to play right away. So he'll be pushing Marcus Joyner in the slot corner spot. So definitely some talent there. Marcus Joyner's a guy who has a big bounce back here also. So there's some talent there. It's got to make sure to get to the most out of it this year.
All right. We have a lot of Raiders fans who listen to the podcast, and they are probably itching to get to the end of the All 32 one because they know what we do here. This is where we get to the part we're going to start getting predictions here. Right now, the Raiders plus 4,000 to win the Super Bowl. The odds from our friends at William Hill, plus 1,500 to win the AFC, and plus $850 to win the AFC West. So if you love winning money and you bet some on the Raiders in Vegas, you might win some if they have a good season. Vic, let me ask you this. Best case scenario, if everything goes right for this team, how do you think they finish in 2020?
Wow, everything goes right. I guess we'll say 10 wins, 11 wins. I mean, that seems like a lot, but we're saying perfect scenario where defense plays well and the offense is, top 5 offense. We'll say 11 wins. Maybe they actually, they probably still can't win the division, but definitely will be a playoff team. I think, ideally their offense is good enough where it scares people and keeps them in the games.
Yeah, and they were in a lot of games last season. I don't think that is and like you said, the defense, the biggest question mark. So let's go the opposite route here. What happens if the wheels just totally fall off the wagon? Everything goes wrong. We have Marcus Mariota starting by week 8. What happens? What do you think the record is if everything goes wrong?
If the wheels fall off, and that's not good. I'm trying to think how bad that could be, but yeah, I guess 4. With the over-under in Vegas is 7.5. So if we're saying 11 is the upside, maybe 4 is the downside, and 4 would be an awful year. So I think the schedule is not as bad though as it was. The schedule actually is very manageable this year. So I think 4-12 would be a really bad season.
Yeah, I don't know if you got the sense from the team, but when the schedule came out, was it something that they were happy with, or maybe thought it was a little unfair? I know some teams aren't always happy with their schedule.
Oh, they were thrilled. Last year they had the worst schedule maybe in the history. Them and the Bucks had the worst schedule in the history of the NFL. They were on the road for 7 weeks in a row, played really tough teams. It was hard to bounce back from that. So I think this year they host 4 games, night games in Vegas, which is a huge edge. Obviously, the league excited about Vegas. They want to go party in Vegas, the league officials and everybody. So that works to the Raiders' favor. So four home games at night in Vegas should be a huge boost.
Yeah, definitely. The schedule could not have been any worse than it was last year, as you mentioned. So, you mentioned that the over-under is set at 7.5. So I'm going to ask you, just let's forget the ceiling. Let's forget the wheels falling off the wagon. What do you think this final record is going to be for the Raiders? Obviously, still 2 months before the season. Something could happen at training camp. But as of right now, what do you think that final record is going to be?
Yeah, I've written so many positive stories this offseason. I'm kind of influenced my own decisions. But I'm going to go with 9 wins. I think 9 wins is a good number. I think, like you mentioned, we talked about the offense. I think the offense should be great. I think the defense should be better. And I think anything less than 9 years would be a bad season. John Gruden's kind of built up to this point, kind of tanked the first season, and last year they made some more moves. They rebuilt the whole roster. So if they can't, get to 8-8, 9-7 this year, things have really gone wrong as far as a big splash, in the Vegas. So I think 9 wins is definitely my prediction, and anything less would be not good.
Here we got it. Vic's early pick is the over. I read your Vic's picks. I follow you on Twitter. And you guys listening can read Vic's stuff at The Athletic. If you don't subscribe, then subscribe, because he puts out great stuff, especially during the season and even during the offseason, all the time. Vic, thanks for joining us and talking Raiders football.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for all the nice words. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. You can follow him on Twitter at Vic Tafur, Victafur. Remember to download, subscribe, and leave a 5-star review here on the Pick 6 podcast. And if you do leave a 5-star review, you should definitely mention how awesome I was as a host today and how awesome Vic was as a guest. We will be back soon. Check your feed and see you guys down the road.